Hey everyone, it's Alexander Robinson. Welcome to the channel, and this is my retro review for The Ghost of Frankenstein, which came out in 1942 and stars Bela Lugosi as Igor and Lon Chaney Jr. as the monster. This movie takes place soon after the events of Son of Frankenstein, where, spoiler alert for the end of that nearly 90-year-old film, Igor has survived getting shot several times by Wolfgang Frankenstein, and the monster, who got kicked into a pit of sulfur by Wolfgang Frankenstein, has somehow survived that as well. The only answers I can come up with for how these two are still alive is that Igor was hung, but lived, so maybe he can survive gunshot wounds. And then as for the monster, this is actually what drives the plot of this movie. The monster has been preserved in the sulfur, but is weak. So Igor and the monster decide to go to a town which has the other son of Frankenstein, and tries to convince this Frankenstein, Ludwig, played by Cedric Hardwicke, to continue his father's projects. Ludwig is like, no thank you, I am not involved in my father's legacy like that. But he's soon haunted by his father's ghost and tells him that the reason the monster is the way that he is because of the abnormal brain. If you put a normal brain in the monster, he'll be fine. So Ludwig finally decides to do that, but Igor has a scheme to try to get his brain inside the monster. After Son of Frankenstein, which was not only the most expensive of all the Universal monster movies, but also the longest at 1 hour and 39 minutes, this movie goes in the opposite direction, where it doesn't have that great level of production value, and it's also really short. It's 1 hour and 7 minutes, and this is the only Frankenstein movie that I've seen that made me go, well, that was pointless. This is just a really nothing movie. It's not terrible, it's got some amusing things about it, but when you watch this movie, you think to yourself, this was clearly a cash grab. Boris Karloff's time as Frankenstein's monster had come to an end, and while Bride was the better ending, Son ended in a way where I'm like, you know what? That's a good way to end the Frankenstein story. Since this movie came out in the 40s, this was part of the Universal Monster era where they were kind of revamping their classic monsters. There was Son of Dracula, there was the Karras Mummy movies, the Wolfman was in there, which is a classic, but most of the monsters that were returning from the 30s were kind of rebooted. Granted, this was a sequel, but it still felt like an attempt to revive the Frankenstein series. Boris Karloff is no longer playing the monster this time around. Instead, it's Lon Chaney Jr., who, as I mentioned several times, is well known for playing the Wolfman. He played the Mummy Karras and played Count Alucard, or Count Dracula. That movie makes no sense. And now he's playing the Frankenstein monster because of his massive success as the Wolfman. And as the Frankenstein monster, he certainly has the face for it. The makeup work is actually still good, despite it not being Boris Karloff, but he's so emotionless. I know the driving force of this movie is to get the monster back at full strength, but he just looks bored, uninterested, and it's a far cry from Boris Karloff's time as the monster. Boris Karloff really brought a lot of emotion to that character. And out of the 3 movies where he played the monster, he only had dialogue in one of them. In Frankenstein and Son of Frankenstein, he conveys so much with no dialogue. And Lon Chaney Jr. just does not accomplish that. However, I'm not going to blame Lon Chaney Jr. for this because the script doesn't really give him anything to do. And the fact that the monster is weak throughout the entire movie just cripples Lon Chaney Jr.'s chances of making this monster interesting. The monster is only interesting, and Lon Chaney Jr. actually brings something to this character once the brain of Igor is inside him. But even then, that's not the voice of Lon Chaney Jr. that you're hearing. That's Bela Lugosi's voice being dubbed over the monster. And speaking of Igor, he's still really entertaining to watch in this movie, but he's not as creepy as he was in Son of Frankenstein. If anything, Igor is the character that really carries this movie. Cedric Hardwicke does a good job as Ludwig Frankenstein, but he doesn't have that much to work with, and I don't think his character is nearly as interesting as Wolfgang Frankenstein. Basil Rathbone just had so much more to work with in that movie, and Wolfgang Frankenstein's motivations were just more interesting. There's really no reason for Ludwig to actually get involved, even with the ghost of his father appearing to tell him, here's what to do. It just feels kind of inorganic. I mean, It's the reason why the movie is called The Ghost of Frankenstein, but it doesn't really add a whole lot. One positive I do like about the movie involving the monster is that he's back to being more of a sympathetic character. There's a sequence in the movie where he bonds with a little girl, which kind of makes up for him accidentally drowning that girl in the first movie. There's not a whole lot of scenes between the two of them, but they're nice moments. There really isn't much else to talk about with this movie. It's entertaining, it's got its good highlights. Bela Lugosi gives a really great performance as Igor, but the movie has no reason to exist. I'd say watch at your own risk. You'll find some amusing things about this movie, and at 1 hour and 7 minutes, you don't have a whole lot to lose, but at the end of the day, Ghost of Frankenstein is the only solo Frankenstein movie that I feel like has no reason to exist. The only thing that kind of makes this movie worthwhile, I guess, is that it sets up the next installment, which we'll talk about in several days. And there you go, that's my review for The Ghost of Frankenstein. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, we are done with the solo Frankenstein movies, but much like with Dracula, this is not the last we've seen of the Frankenstein monster. So we're gonna move on to the next series of Universal Monster sequels, the Karras Mummy movies. Now, I've already reviewed the Boris Karloff movie. I reviewed that and all 3 Brendan Fraser mummies in prep for the awful Tom Cruise mummy. And one of the great things about the Boris Karloff mummy is that there was never actually a sequel. So that is a full-on standalone movie. I'm very comfortable with that review, so I will not be doing it again. And we're just gonna move on to the Karras Mummy movies, starting with The Mummy's Hand. I wanna thank you guys so much for watching this review. I wanna give a special thank you to my subscribers and YouTube members right over here. You guys are the reason why this channel continues to grow every day, and if you want to help to financially support the channel, you can do so via YouTube memberships for as little as $1.99 a month. But until next time, I want to know what you guys think about The Ghost of Frankenstein. Whatever your opinions are, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. If you want to find me elsewhere on the internet, you can find me on these social media platforms and my theme park and travel channel right here on YouTube. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.